Hello, and welcome to the League of Women Voters of Portland's Voters Forum for the candidates for Portland Commissioner position number 2. I am Susan Gilbert, a Portland League member and moderator for this forum. The League is a nonpartisan organization dedicated to making democracy work. We believe democracy works best when voters are informed about issues and engaged in their communities. We are presenting this forum to give Portland voters the opportunity to learn more about these two candidates, Commissioner Dan Ryan and AJ McCrary. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have been as yet unable to resume our traditional in-person voter forums. We expect to do this for this fall's general election. All participants are in different locations. Please share this voter forum recording with your friends. We all need to be informed voters. We are grateful for support from the Carol and Velma Sailing Foundation, the Weiss Foundation, the League of Women Voters of Portland Education Fund, and our media partner, Metro East Community Media. Under the voter forum rules agreed to by the candidates for this event, each of the candidates will give a 2-minute opening statement, followed by questions we have prepared, and each will have a 2-minute closing. Each candidate will have up to 90 seconds to answer each question. The candidates have previously agreed to comply with these time rules. As determined by the Secretary of State's random alphabet for this election, Commissioner Ryan will give the first opening statement. We will then alternate who answers questions first. Commissioner Ryan, please proceed. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you, League of Women Voters, for having us on here today. It's great to have this forum to make democracy work. My name is Commissioner Dan Ryan, and I am delighted to talk to Portlanders today. Thank you for your interest. And I jumped into this race over 2 years ago. It was when Commissioner Nick Fish passed away, and there was a special election, and me and about 18 others jumped into the race. And since then, I've just been so focused on what the city needs to get out of the current ditch that it's in. And this was long before COVID. It just it just escalated. The fact is, we have to stay focused on the priorities that I talked about then, and they're the same priorities today. And that's the focus that I bring to this position. We're focused on looking at homelessness and knowing that that's definitely the #1 issue concerning our city and our state. Then there's community safety. And the third is economic recovery. Yes, there's nuances and details within each one, but what I brought to the council is staying focused on our priorities. I don't care about our bureau assignments. I care about us as a team focusing on what the city needs to move forward. The few things I'd like to add, I came to this race because of my own personal conviction. You know, I'm from a family of 8. I have 6 older brothers. And the fact is, my third oldest brother passed away on the streets of homelessness. And I never forget that experience. And the fact that he couldn't get services for his mental health and behavioral health issues. And that's why I keep talking about those issues, because it's not only a #1 focus for our city and county, but also for a state that suffers a great deal in being in last place with those systems. I know my time's running up, and I look forward to engaging with you on the additional questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. McCrary, you may give your opening statement.
Yeah, my name is Alana Joy McCrary. I go by AJ McCrary, and I am a Portlander. I was born and raised here, grew up here, and I've been doing community work forever. The last 2 years, I've been doing work through Equitable Giving Circle and Mom Block. I've spearheaded raising over $4 million and invested that into community. Been feeding over 375 families through our 2 food programs at Equitable Giving Circle, and honored to be in this space because I know we need new leadership. We need new energy in Portland City Hall. I want to take the type of community care that I have been doing on the ground to a city level. We need new leadership because Portland is in a rut. We have derailed from the progressive, thoughtful place that was trying to address climate change, trying to address racial injustices, trying to address many of our issues, including houselessness, economic development, and so on. And we've lost our way, and I want to help get us back to that. I have a track record of getting things done as a single Black mom. Yes, I'm very light-skinned. I move through this world in a very different way, and I think we need that type of leadership and thought and understanding on City Council. The average age of Portlanders are 37, and currently the average age of Portland City Hall is 56. And it's time that we get some new representation and energy in that space. And I cannot wait to be the person to do that work.
Thank you. Our first question goes to you, Ms. McCrary. The city and county collaborate through the Joint Office of Homeless Services to address the needs of unhoused individuals in our community. What measures would you recommend to more effectively meet those needs?
Absolutely. I think it's really important that we are aggressively working towards getting everybody housed. The first thing that I would like to do as a city commissioner is work with community-based organizations and create long-term shelters that are funded appropriately so that we can be getting people immediate touch services that do not expire and leave people in the lurch, which really derails trust from community members. I'm also really fascinated and excited to get behind the 3,000 challenge. It is a great initiative, really trying to get 3,000 folks housed in the the thousands of empty units that are currently empty in Portland. For every 2 houseless people, there is for every 1 houseless person, there are 2 empty units in Portland. And so we need to start working with landlords and developers and start accessing those spaces. I'm also really interested in talking about home ownership as part of our overall housing program and the ways that we move forward. We know that home ownership changes the way that people are rooted in community. And it's important that we start making sure that our professional working community is becoming homeowners. And so I'm very excited to be working both with the city, the county, as well as community-based organizations to get our housing crisis moving forward.
Thank you. Commissioner Ryan?
Yes. First of all, Susan, thank you for the question. A lot of people are unaware that it is a partnership between the city and the county. In fact, the county runs the services. All the contracts go through the county. And when I got the assignment to be the dotted line from the city, the first thing I did was disrupt the fact that we didn't have any real-time data. We're still building that. But because I was there, we now have a contract with Built for Zero, and we're building that into the system. You got to know where you are in order to know where you're going. And now that we have more and more voters and more households paying the bill for these services, they deserve to know how we're spending the money. 2, when I got there, I noticed both in the continuum of being on the streets all the way to home ownership, I noticed the 2 weakest parts of the continuum were the on-ramps from being on the streets into successful housing, and then on-ramps into becoming a homeowner and really building that next generational wealth. And so that's the areas that I've been focusing on. And when I brought the village concept and the idea into the dais and then got full support from the city council and full support from the county, it was because it was really clear that we weren't providing services first. We weren't doing assessments of people on the ground. We were putting people into housing before we had more information about what they needed to be successful in housing. And so it's bringing those services to the villages, mental health, behavioral health, and other supports. And I'm also doing land banking so that we can actually have some homes that people can access, and so we can really build that next generational wealth. That's what I'm focused on. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Ryan, you get our next question. You get to go first, and that is, what steps would you take to increase the public's trust and confidence in the Portland Police Bureau?
As a city, it's really become clear that organized crime has been spiking. It's across the country for sure, but the increases in Portland are much higher rate than any other city. And so what I'm hearing from voters is that they want community safety, and that includes the police. I think that's the big word there, is includes. We're in a work session this morning, and I want our city to build the best first responder system in the country. That includes police, includes fire, and includes Portland street response. Together, collectively, they are a team, and Portlanders need people to respond much quicker when they dial 911 or 311. my point is that trust comes when they start to see an integrated system that really works together seamlessly. I'm also really pleased to be on a city council that worked their tails off to have a contract that made some gains. We finally have a disciplinary guide that gives clarity. We're moving forward with body-worn cameras. We now are moving forward to have a civilian dean of training so that we include the community. And then finally, I'd like to say how important it was that Commissioner Rubio and I led the effort to get more community investments out into those most impacted by violence. And because if you don't improve the trust between those communities most impacted by violence with our law enforcement, it's really hard to ever think that you're going to build that trust and see better results.
Thank you. Ms. McCurdy? You're muted, AJ.
Excuse me, sorry about that. First of all, this is a great question. The police and public safety are such an important conversation in our community right now. First off, I really do believe that we need to be making sure all officers are wearing body cams at all time and not able to see them before anything, after anything happens. More importantly than just body cams, we do need to be investing in Portland Street Response and building it out to have 24 hours a day to shorten the call time response and get the public aware that this is a service and that this is something that we're moving forward with as a city. I'm also really for the charter changes, so that will change who is overseeing the police and how that is all managed. And lastly, we really need to invest in preventative services. When we're talking about the police and public safety, public services, well-resourced communities mean safe communities. I was just talking to some folks at Multnomah County, and they are seeing really great results in investing in preventative services and making sure folks have access to services before. And that is one of the ways that the city of Portland needs to be moving with our own police force.
All right, thank you. Our next question goes first to you, Ms. McCurry. What reforms, if any, do you favor in the government of the city of Portland and why?
I've been part of the charter committee as part of the outreach and definitely a big fan of the charter changes, all of the ones that have been recommended, including getting more folks on city council, changing the structure of the mayors, what they're power of, hiring a city manager. I think it is high time that we got our city government to be modernized, especially the size of the city that we are, and the way that we're managing right now is not effective. It's not really working, and you can tell that by just taking a walk outside. So pretty much all of the recommendations that the charter has moved forward with, I think, are a really great way for us to move forward as a city. We need more voices on city council, and we need more shifts so that folks are accountable. I'd say something else that I think is really important from a city standpoint is for everyone to get familiar with the auditor's office and what is happening in that space and how that can help us keep our city officials accountable.
Thank you. Commissioner Ryan.
Yeah, I want to start off by acknowledging that we have one of the best campaign finance reform systems in the country. And I'm a participant in the small donor program, and it means that only an individual can only give up to $250 with no corporate purse coming in. And two, I want to say that it's so important that we do pass some charter review reforms. I know as somebody that voted yes on that in the early 2000s, sadly, not a lot of people joined me in that, so I'm glad it'll be coming probably back in November. I look forward to seeing the details of the proposal. What I really want is to make sure that we have an executive mayor, we have a council that focuses on the strategic priorities of the city on policy, and how important it is to make sure that we have a city manager, a city administrator, if you will. Because if you look below the iceberg, what's really mind-blowing is that we have 23 bureaus and at least 10 offices that kind of act like bureaus. We have a lot of silos, we have a lot of duplication. I want to take my 32-year career, much of it on organizational development work, being an executive that's built nonprofits and to greater efficiencies. I want to make sure that the city starts to represent a well-run organization with those same efficiencies. Right now, we have competing interests with bureaus, and they bump into each other, and it really slows things down. And I'm sure people are noticing that at a time of emergency. I know I sure have, as I've tried to do innovative work for the city at this time. Thanks.
All right, our next question goes first to Commissioner Ryan. How would you improve communication between city councilors and city residents so the residents have a greater sense of being heard?
Thank you, Susan. I gotta say, I was onboarded into this job on September 10th, 2020. That was that famous week where the wildfires were raging, and we all were told to stay inside our home. So it was quite a challenging onboarding remotely that week. My point is, I do think that the remote systems that we've had to adapt to during COVID have been a real challenge for building relationships in general. Just in the last couple of months, I've been going to the office much more often, and I got to tell you, it's just so refreshing to connect with one another. How does that relate to the people in the city? Well, I think people would like to see us out more. And I think that that's really important. We still are a society that likes space time. And in general, I think that we have to move more towards, when we do the charter review, charter in implementations, is to look at a better communication system, because there are so many issues where all 5 of us are responding to the same question. And it'd be great if we had more of a streamlined approach to many of the questions that are being asked. I know our office is doing the best we can to get back to everybody, and we'll continue to work on that. But I got to tell you, when we open up the doors and everyone's back in the office, it's going to make it much better.
Ms. McCurry?
Yeah, I love this question. As somebody who is a marketing person and does a lot of community outreach engagement, I'm excited to work on this specifically. Portland definitely needs to modernize the way that we are communicating with residents. We also need to have regular town halls. Something that needs to happen is that regular ongoing communication and accessibility to residents. It's not appropriate just to have a town hall or a conversation when it fits city council or when it fits the institution. This needs to be a regular ongoing open line of communication. I'd also say to make sure that the website and our regular communication is actually getting to residents, and that the website is something that people can navigate. A lot of the information on the website is hard to read or find if you are not familiar or not really used to being on that website. It's hard to find opportunities or ways to plug in. So making it more user friendly, and also having both City Hall accessible to residents and our elected officials, me, going out into community and being a part of community. I've noticed a lot over the last couple of years, even prior to COVID, that you do not see many of our elected officials in community or in spaces with folks, particularly in the Black and Brown communities. So I definitely would like to be a part of that bridge and move us forward in that way so that we can build ongoing community trust and those relationships.
Thank you. Our next question goes first to you, Ms. McCurry. Ranked choice voting has been increasingly proposed for Oregon elections. What are your thoughts on adopting ranked choice voting for our elections, and why?
I actually have really mixed feelings about this. I sort of see both sides of it, and yeah, I honestly, I have a lot of mixed feelings about that. I think that's where I'm just going to leave that in this moment.
Okay, Commissioner Ryan?
I'm open to that. I haven't studied it thoroughly. I know it was in place in New York City this last election. It seems to be a trend that a lot of progressive cities are adopting. I don't want to get in the way of progress. So if it means that it's a more thorough representation of the sentiment of the voters, that's what democracy is all about. So I'll say yes to that. Thanks.
Okay. Our next question goes first to Ms. McCurry. I'm not sure that should be correct. Anyway, please explain your assessment of the efficacy of Portland's neighborhood associations in working with the city on city problems.
I grew up around neighborhood associations. My dad's office was across the North Portland Neighborhood Association in North Portland at the old library. So I have some fond feelings of the neighborhood associations and those interactions. I definitely think that there is an opportunity for us to sort of modernize and change a little bit of that workflow. I think that there are opportunities to work with neighborhood associations in helping get out information, help get some consistency in sort of the way that we're engaging with different neighborhoods. I think that there is still opportunity to change that system and have it be something that is supportive and a part of our community fiber. This is not saying that there is not issues in that space or that there's, that we do not need to address accountability, but I do think that there's opportunity for us to continue to move forward with that part of our city fiber. It's actually a pretty interesting and special part of the way that we exist.
Commissioner Ryan?
Yeah, Portland's neighborhood associations have been the envy of cities across the country. We've always been known to be the city that meets and the city that engages and the city that provides input. So I think we have an opportunity to empower the current neighborhood associations to include action that demonstrates their willingness to evolve and to change, to make sure that there's more inclusion, more renters involved, for example, in the meetings. And I think it's important to incentivize them to come along. I think what I'm seeing is we need to focus on this as well, because I think at the moment we're in a place where the neighborhood associations are feeling like they're not being seen and not being listened to. And I think that we've had some chaos, if you will, and it's time for us to remember that we're not going to move forward as a city who's definitely at one of its most challenging moments ever in our history if we're not inclusive of the activism, of the engagement, of the service that our neighborhoods bring to the city as a whole. So I'm looking forward to being a part of a city council that will make it continue to be the envy of the rest of the country and continue and also strive towards the advancements that we'll make in diversity and inclusion and equity.
Thank you. You are listening to the League of Women Voters of Portland's Voter Forum for candidates for the Portland Commissioner position number 2. And we'll return now to our questions. Our next question goes first to Commissioner Bryan. In your opinion, how well or not well has the city's small donor program worked for financing campaigns of candidates for the city council?
Susan, I think it's one of those stories that we should be telling more often across the country. I think it's working really well. I know I saw it last time I ran 2 years ago, and it brought in a record number of participants. And it's clearly enticing other people to get involved today as well. It really does even the playing field. I just love that it makes you hustle really hard as well. Sure, my opponent can agree on that. It's like you really just have to go out there, you keep engaging, keep meeting more people in the community. And I got to say, it's been wonderful that science has advanced and more of us have been vaccinated. So I know compared to 2 years ago, it's been wonderful to actually have more face time with voters. And I really appreciate the fact that we have a small donor program. In my opinion, that's the best way to move forward in terms of a democracy wanting to be fair, is about having fair elections. And we're the role model right now for the rest of the country on having really strict limitations. I hope the rest of the state notices what we're doing in Portland. And I think it'll make all of our campaigns and all of our community engagement and campaigns more just.
Ms. McCurry?
Yeah, I also agree that the small donor election program is really incredible and definitely changing the landscape of local elections. I think that it is definitely still something that's being piloted, and there are, like any program, things to keep growing and working out of. But overall, I think it's an incredible step forward, and it is an example of the ways that Portland has piloted policy to move us forward. And I think that it's a great example of something that we are, working towards and doing correctly, and an opportunity for us to kind of lean into that, right? When we pilot things and we see things change, again, without piloting something, and then we have the opportunity to lean into it, we're going to definitely see other folks copying this as it continues to grow. And that really is one of those things that shows or highlights Portland as a progressive place that is moving forward in the right way. So I think it's great and it's exciting, and I hope that more folks tap into this program. And I hope that we as a city keep investing in it and, tweaking it so that it is the best program that it can be. Definitely think they also need a little support in that office, just because it's small staff that is definitely overworked.
Okay, our next question goes first to you, Ms. McCurry. What lessons has the city learned in its response to the COVID-19 epidemic?
Ooh, That's I'd say in community, a lesson that we have learned is definitely to lean on each other and work together. You saw during COVID, mutual aid has exploded all over the city, and that has been really beautiful to watch and witness. I think a lesson that the city is learning in real time is how critical it is to have better relationships with both the community in general, with our neighbors or citizens or constituents, as well as with community-based organizations doing the work. I think that this COVID experience, which is still going on as the pandemic is still raging and people are still dying, and has just taught us how much it is important for us to be moving and being differently. I don't know if that's completely shaking out yet, but I definitely see that lesson everywhere. And I'm definitely hearing folks everywhere talking about it, that this has been a big eye opener that we need to be moving and functioning in a different capacity.
Commissioner Ryan?
Yeah, I would start by saying that I'm probably not alone, that I know my neighbors on my block so much better than I did before COVID-19. I think it was started with the 7 o'clock acknowledgement of the healthcare workers. And a few people in our block started doing that, and we all started joining in. And so every evening felt like a little block party. And I know that Portland is coming back block by block. So the fact that we have more of that activity throughout the city is great. I really have to speak to the fact that we want to lower the fossil fuel emissions. And the fact is, this is teaching a lot of us that there are many more opportunities to have some important meetings virtually. And it avoids all of us being in our cars or driving all around town. And so I think that's a step in the right direction. I think the hybrid model that we're moving towards in general is really smart. I've also seen that it's increased the number of people who testify at city council meetings. And I think the ease of doing testimony through the virtual network has really helped many, many people. So we'll be going back to the chambers soon, but we'll make sure that we have the inclusiveness of what the virtual world offers in terms of being engaged in our city government. So I think, like everything, it was forced upon us, and we're learning what we want to keep, but nothing will replace the opportunity to really connect with people face to face. And so I think we've been all craving that. So now we get to figure out what that hybrid's like.
Thank you. Our next question goes first to you, Commissioner Ryan. Please explain your ideas for the revitalization of Portland's downtown.
Yeah, first off, I'm excited about this one. I know just the fact that I've been going back to the office much more the last couple of months has been great. In fact, today, it was hard to find a parking spot. And so that was the most excited I've ever been about not being able to find a parking spot, because we really just need to see currency flowing. During the day, much of the small businesses downtown rely on those that are downtown working. And then the evening, it's about the arts organizations. And so having our art houses back in business is so exciting. And I know the restaurants are really appreciative of that. I've always been a pretty big fan of community events, but I'm more excited about Rose Festival than I've ever been in my entire life. So it'll be exciting to welcome back our Rose Festival reunion coming up at the very end of May, and also Pride Festival after that, Good in the Hood. So it's going to be great for people to be out in community again, and that will bring back the center of our city and all our neighborhoods as well. So it's about getting joy back on our streets, and with that joy comes currency flowing for our small businesses, and that's part of the economic recovery that we all deserve.
Okay. Ms. McCreary?
Yeah, I'd say a big part of revitalizing downtown is really leaning into public transit. We really need to bring fareless transit back. I grew up with that, and it really made a difference in ridership. I think that will help getting more and more folks to the downtown area. Sidewalk seating has been really successful in getting people out and about and moving. And as we're in this hybrid space where the pandemic is still going on, but we are also excited to be in community and because we miss folks, and it's just, peopling feels good. Having those opportunities is something that we continue to invest in. I'd also say really finding out art and cultural things, both the institutions, but also events to help get people in that space and excited. Celebration is something that the city of Portland definitely could lean into in the way that we are engaging and building community. And lastly, I'd say making sure that we're supporting small businesses. Oregon is 95% small businesses, and it's important that we invest in our small businesses in real time. And if we want to revitalize downtown, we're going to have to invest in those small businesses, just like we're going to need to invest in small businesses across the city. I think as really putting our foot in those kinds of investments will change how people engage and interact, and also move throughout our city.
Thank you. Our next question goes first to you, Ms. McCreary. Gun deaths have increased significantly in Portland since the pandemic commenced. What ideas do you have to reduce them?
Yeah, gun violence is something I think a lot about as a mother of a teenager. Definitely some of the programs that we have seen out in the Mount Scott area to block off streets. It also says street lights make a difference when we're talking about public safety. The thing about, I know a lot of people want to immediately lean into the police, but the police show up after an emergency. So when we're talking about gun violence, we need to be thinking about preventative measures. How are we preventing our community and like preventing things happening in our community? How are we supporting people so that they are not pushed to a space of crisis or violence? And so that's going to be leaning into preventative services, definitely through supporting folks that are houseless, or folks that are also in transitional housing, supporting folks that are low income, supporting folks that are in any sort of a crisis space, as well as doing preventative stuff in our schools with our youth and investing in our families in Portland. I think that'll really change a lot of the violence. Again, well-resourced communities are safe communities. I can say that all day because the data shows that. And so when we're talking about gun violence, we really have to be talking about preventative services, because otherwise we're just talking to be talking.
Thank you. Commissioner Ryan?
Yeah, in addition to homelessness, it's about community safety and definitely the spike in gun violence that is making our economic recovery the most challenging. Organized crime has been on quite a big spike in our city, much higher than the rest of the country. And we have to be honest about that. That's one reason I really leaned in with Commissioner Rubio to get the investments out into the community. And I've already seen the results of that by doing a couple ride-alongs. I've really enjoyed being in the cars and doing the foot patrol with people from communities that are most impacted by violence. The visits that they do to the homes of those who have been impacted by violence was very tender and very important to build those relationships. It's also very important to connect with all the people who do security at the clubs downtown so that there can be that communication flowing from people that aren't armed, but actually have relationships and can help keep people safer by that authentic relationship building that they do. I keep saying it because it's true. You have to build relationships between those that are most impacted by violence with our very comprehensive and vast community safety system, which includes the police. And I'm a part of a city council that's improving that first responder system, that's using community strategies. And together we'll build morale and we'll make sure that we put a stop to this. But I look forward to having more dialogue, especially about the increase in drug violence as well.
Thank you. Our next question goes first to you, Commissioner Ryan. Explain what additional steps, if any, you would support in order to reach the goals outlined in the city's climate action plan.
Yeah, I had an opportunity to really show you who I was when it comes to this. The way that the commission form of government set up, there was a decision that was in the Bureau of Development Services, and it was about were we going to expand the fossil fuel infrastructure out in Linton area, or are we going to deny it? And all of the coding and such, really spoke to the fact that just know I got a lot of advice that I was supposed to go with the flow. And I instead reached out to the Native American community, specifically through the Office of Tribal Affairs. And we pushed back and we denied that development. And I think that climate justice, there's moments where leaders just have to do the right thing, and climate justice will be fought like every big justice issue of our time, and that's in the courts. I think that the city has to do a better job of leading by example. So when we're asking business and industry to change their fleets and remove themselves from fossil fuels, we have to lead. And so we have to look at our own fleets at Peabody and such and make sure that we're taking the first steps to moving towards less fossil fuels and improving the carbon footprint. So I'm excited to be a part of a city council that will lead by example.
Ms. McCreary?
Yeah, some additional steps that I would like to take would be, I mean, really pushing back on fossil fuels, really pushing back on the highway expansion. The highway expansion is going to lead to more carbon emissions and also probably to more organized crime. We're going to open up that freeway and then be having more and more people able to come in and out in the city, and that's going to be a problem. I'd also like to really champion PSEP. This is a Portland Clean Energy Fund is a great program. It ended up having more money than originally thought, and so people are trying to squash that or revert things. But I think the PSEF policy is an opportunity for us to really be those leaders in progression and trying to be leaders in the environment. If you're not familiar with that, I definitely say check that out. It's really important. I'd also say, what are the, like, as Dan Ryan was just talking about, how can we as a city be investing in electric vehicles? How can we be leading the change in that? I'd say also making sure that we're leaning into local food systems. Local food systems is a great way to also reduce carbon emissions. So I think there's a lot of different things that we can sort of really infuse into the way that our city is moving and breathing. I'd say also to really do an audit on our city recycling program and see about the ways that we can invest into that program better. There's a lot of things that we need to be doing and can lean in stronger. The environment is really important to me as an individual and will be really important to me as a city commissioner.
Thank you. All right, our next question goes first to Ms. McCreary. Who is your political role model and why?
Oh gosh. I have quite a few people that I look up to politically. You know, Stacey Abrams is somebody that I really look up to right now in real time, just the way that she is leading and moving. But I definitely could talk for quite a while on the folks that have been active elected officials and folks that have run in general, or just who are supporting policy and legislation locally. Joanne Hardesty is somebody I really admire. Her work has been incredible the last 4 years. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Commissioner Ryan?
Yeah, locally, it'd definitely be my rest in peace, my friend Vera Katz, Mayor Katz. She just loved this city so much. You just always saw her walking around in Northwest Portland where she lived. She would take down notes of what needs to be improved, just like the fierce mother overseeing our city. And I just loved her chutzpah. So I really appreciated the way she showed up and served. On the national level, Ann Richards, former governor of Texas, is definitely one of my role models. I had a chance when I was in my 20s to sit next to her at a table, and I'll just never forget that experience. And then as a kid that was growing up gay and not seeing any role models, and I just remember this little article in the Oregonian talking about an openly gay man in San Francisco. Harvey Milk was just elected to city council, and it made me feel like I wasn't alone. And so I'll always hold Harvey Milk in my heart.
Great, thank you. We will now have 2-minute closing statements from the candidates. Commissioner Ryan, you may proceed.
Thank you, Susan. Again, thank you, League of Women Voters, for having this forum today. It's such a pleasure to be with you today. I moved back home in 1997, and I came home because I was told by my doctor in Seattle that I had about 6 months to live, to a year maybe at the most, because I'd been in the hospital twice for pneumocystis pneumonia. It was right before the newer drugs came out to help people with HIV. 6 months later, I started taking those new drugs and they started working. And that same doctor said, Dan, you got to get back to work. So my point is, I've really enjoyed the fact that since then I've been able to serve my hometown for the last 27 years. And I think it's so important to just get up every day and do something that's bigger than myself. That's always been my dream in life. And so I'm just grateful to be of service after having a long storied career with a lot of accomplishments and bringing those executive experiences, that community experience, the raising tons of money in the community to do good causes, and now taking that and helping government be more pure, government to be more engaged, government to be more realistic, and getting the resources into the community. So at this moment in my life, I'm just so grateful to be of service. I know that our best days are here and to come in the future. And I know that if you give me a full term, I'll continue to just swing hard and do what people say is really difficult to do, which is build things at a time of crisis. And so I'm a doer, and I'm grateful to be on the city council, and I'm really excited to get our city out of the ditch. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. McCreary, you may proceed.
Yeah, again, my name is AJ McCrary, and I am excited to be your next Portland City Commissioner for seat number 2. I am a person that gets things done. I'm an implementer, problem solver, and a mom on a mission. I am excited to see our city get back to a place of where, the environment is something that we are centering, where we are rooted in community and building a place where everybody can thrive. I know that I am the new energy that we need in Portland City Hall. I have a track record of getting things done. And again, we need representation of our actual constituents in the city on Portland City Hall. So we need younger voices in that space. And if there is a millennial that could step up to this job and get it done, I am that person. And so I'm excited to serve our city in the way that I've been doing the last decades, and really bring that kind of care to a citywide level. You can check me out at ajforportland.com. I'm very available, and you'll probably see me out and about in community, and I'd love to meet you.
Thank you. So this concludes today's Voters Forum. We thank each of the candidates for their participation. Audience members, please share this forum recording with your family and friends. We all need to be informed voters, because informed voters are powerful voters. If you were registered to vote by April 26th, you should receive your ballot by the first week in May. As with all Oregon elections, it is mail in only. Yes, ballots must be postmarked by Tuesday, May 17th at 8 p.m. You can also find a drop-off location near you by checking vote411.org. This is Susan Gilbert for the League of Women Voters of Portland. Thank you for watching and listening. Please be an informed member, and remember, your vote counts.